Hi everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards here, and in today's video I'm going to go back to the early 80s, my first experience in card collecting. I did buy some football cards in 1979, but it was really 1980 that I jumped in, started opening a lot of packs of really the four major sports and some movie cards as well. But in the summer of that year I opened up a lot of the baseball packs in the spring and summer. And Reggie Jackson was the main card that I was looking for, as well as the other Yankees from that time. But there was another player that I just got connected to during that era that I picked up recently. And he's a player that I've been picking up a little bit more of here and there, just because I'm trying to add some of those players that really make me smile when I look back and say, yeah, that's a guy that I enjoyed watching, or I just enjoyed having their cards in my collection. For whatever reason it be, most likely just because they're players that I would see on This Week in Baseball or I'd read about, and just were those that were in the limelight at that time. So I added this 1980 Topps Dave Parker, just a beautiful card here, one that I remember pulling back in 1980, and I was so excited to get it because the Pirates had won the World Series the year before. It's the first World Series I remember watching. And I just loved their uniforms. And this card has so much going for it that's just great, with the yellow and all-star lettering on the black ribbon there. And then you have the jersey all in yellow up to the helmet, and it's contrasted with the black. And you got the striping there on his sleeve and the ribbon there on the bottom with the team name. I just always enjoyed this card. And I didn't really analyze cards as much back then when I was a kid, but I just knew there was something about this card that I liked. And when I got this card in the mail, it just made me smile because it just took me right back to that time. And I have the set, but now this is one because of how I display cards in my room. And I've talked about that before with the graded card displays that I have. This one's going to look great. And that's what collecting's about, is when you can get those cards that you can connect with, and it's just that emotional feeling that comes over with you. And when I see these two cards side by side, I'm back in 1980 again, which is pretty awesome. And that's what the cards can do. I'm not putting a run of Dave Parker cards together, but thought I'd show a couple others that I have in my collection. I have a 74 Topps rookie, as well as a 79 Topps, and now I've added this 80 Topps. There are a few more that I want to put into my collection, especially the ones from the later 70s. And I also have a lot of respect for Parker and how he reinvented himself in the 85 season into an elder statesman, and the work he also did with Barry Larkin, as well as how he led those A's teams later in his career. Got involved with the drugs in the early 80s. I think it affected his career. He ballooned up in weight. Just wasn't the same player that he was in the late 70s. But he's a guy that came back, and I think we as Americans love those types of stories, of those reclamation projects, so to speak. And Parker really did come back to become a great player later in his career and a leader on some very good teams. So happy to have him in my collection, and I just like what he represents, as well as just the beauty of these cards. Another card I added that I had fond memories of from my childhood is this 81 Topps Dale Murphy. Now, Murphy wasn't a big name in 1981. I just like this card. He's got the full swing here, and then the blue jersey and the two-tone white and blue helmet. And the 81 Topps set, I think it could have been a better set, in my view, if they had put the logo on the hats there of the teams. But it is a set that I like. It's underrated, I think, for color with the green there. And then I just like even this, how they put this white on the inside of the next to the green piping. That really frames the picture. It gives it like that double matted look, which I think enhances the pictures on the card. Just a subtle little thing that Topps did there that I appreciate. And Murphy as a player, I really came to like him in the mid-'80s, probably about 83 or 84, when I would visit my grandparents in Florida, and they would get the Braves games on television, and I'd be down there for a couple weeks in the springtime, and I got to watch the baseball games with my grandfather and my dad, and I came to really enjoy Dale Murphy as a player during that time. And SABR, which is the Society of Baseball Research, described him as a Boy Scout. He didn't smoke or drink, curse or carouse. And he was a professional athlete who children could look up to. And just somebody that I enjoyed, and really a heck of a ball player. The Braves came into their own in the 82 season when they hired Joe Torre as their manager. They ended up winning the division. They got swept by the Cardinals, I believe, that year in the 82 season. But he won the first of his back-to-back MVPs in 1982. And just a player that was a hot player as the 80s went on, and then his career kind of fizzled out towards the end. But I think he's a borderline Hall of Fame player. Again, if he doesn't get in, I don't really care, because he's one of those players that's synonymous with 1980s baseball, and I just love having him in my collection. Here's a closer look at the Murphy card, and I'm going to put another one that I like of his next to it. This is 79 Topps, and just look at that uniform. Look at the colors there with the red and the white, and look how bright white that helmet is. I love the 79 Topps card as well. It's in my case in my card room right now. So those two just look fantastic next to each other. There are a few other Murphys from my collection, the 77 Topps, which is his rookie card, and then he made another 4-panel in 1978, I'm sorry, and then you have his 1980 Topps next to it. And this gives a nice front view of his helmet with the lowercase a that I always liked about the Braves cards at that time, when they would show the front of the helmets. And just some of those late 70s, early 80s uniforms, I just love them. They do bring back a lot of great memories. And you got the collars there with the no buttons that they went to back then. Not the most stylish of jerseys, maybe, or classic, maybe is a better word, but they're certainly synonymous of the age of sports that they were playing in. That 77 Topps card was such a hot card during the later part of the 80s. I'd go to card shows, and it would be there. I'd go to Florida and see it at the flea markets that I would go to. And it's a 4-panel card, but it was Murphy was just somebody that was beloved in baseball, and his cards were much appreciated, I think, by the collectors at that time. And then in the 78, it's a 4-panel card. It's also got a very underrated Lance Parrish, Ernie Witt with the Blue Jays, and Bo Diaz as well. So there's 4 nice players on the panel on this card. It doesn't have to be Hall of Famers. These are four players that I think a lot of us growing up in the 80s remember. So 2 fun cards to look at. The next item that I'm super excited about picking up is this 1977 Sports Illustrated from June 6th of that year. And it depicts Mark Fidrich with Big Bird behind him. Of course, he was known as the Bird, and he was one of those iconic pitchers of 1976. And originally, this was supposed to be published earlier and released, but the Bird got hurt that year in spring training, and he had to have surgery. And this article came out, and magazine cover came out a week after he came back. And he pitched very well early on, but then a week, I believe it was like a week or 2 after this magazine came out, he got hurt again. He hurt his shoulder, and his career was never the same. But I think this captures a moment of time of 70s history. He was iconic, and it goes so well with my Bird rookie card that I picked up a little while back. And what's cool about this magazine is it's very hard to get Sports Illustrated from this time period without the labels on them. So I always try to find one where the label isn't interfering with the cover too much. And this one's in very nice condition. I got it from a Canadian seller, so the label on this is from Canada. It's from Ottawa, Ontario, which kind of goes cool because this is an O-Pee-Chee card. So I thought that was a nice connection to have the magazine from Canada as well as having the O-Pee-Chee card. And this is just one that I've been wanting to add to my magazine collection for a while, and I finally found one that was in really nice shape that wasn't going to break the bank, because this is a very popular cover with Big Bird and, of course, Mark Fidrich on it. So thrilled to add this one, and I'll just take a little closer look at the magazine for you. You can see here Big Bird's even holding the ball, and then you got Fidrich there looking in the windup and just showing the joy that this man had, and just the joy of the times, I think, and what he brought to the game. And just he increased attendance, I read, in Detroit by 400,000 in 1976. This is a guy I want in my collection because he represents such a great thing about baseball. And when these types of players come along, even if it's a star that burns out quickly, it's fun to have them and fun to acknowledge their place in history. Now, as fun as the Bird was, there's another icon that came in the early 80s that had a much longer career and a storied career. Not a Hall of Famer, but I think he's had as much influence on baseball as many of the biggest names in baseball history, and that's Fernando Valenzuela. And it was said that Dodger executive Walter O'Malley, who helped form the great Dodgers teams of the 50s and 60s, wanted to tap into the growing Latino market in Southern California when the team moved there in 1958. And he was looking for a Mexican Sandy Koufax. And O'Malley died in 1979, so he was not alive to see his dream realized when Fernando Valenzuela just rocked the baseball world with his stellar 1981 campaign. So it was April 9th, 1981 that Fernandomania was born. And it was at that time Valenzuela was projected to be the number 3 starter. He was moved up to pitch in the opener due to an injury to Jerry Royce. And his 5-hit shutout of the defending division champion Houston Astros caught everybody's attention. And I think he was armed with the greatest screwball since Hall of Famer Carl Hubble. And what Fernando did in his first 8 starts was a streak for the ages. He had 8 wins, 7 complete games, 5 shutouts, 4 earned runs, and he surrendered this in his first 72 innings. If you include his season before, he was over 80 innings, and only Bob Gibson's 3 earned runs in 103 innings in 1968 was better than Fernando's 4 earned runs in 89 and a 2/3 innings, which again went back to the 1980 season. So 81 was a strike-shortened year, which I think obviously impacted Fernando some because people didn't get to enjoy him for the full season, but he did become the first player ever to win Rookie of the Year and the Cy Young Award in the same season. He went on also to pick up a couple wins in the playoffs, and he won Game 3 in the World Series. He had a 147-pitch, 5-4 victory when the Dodgers beat the Yankees, and then it started a 4-game win streak for the Dodgers, and they ended up winning the World Series that year. And what I think sums up Fernando the best is he had such an impact on the Latino community that when he pitched in 1981, at games that he started, there was a 7,500 attendance increase in Dodger Stadium, and on the road there was over 14,000 fans on average per game when he pitched in his road games. And that didn't go that high throughout his career, but he always was higher than the average whenever he pitched, and that's what he drew as far as widening the net of baseball fans. And it was Jaime Jarrín, who was an announcer for the Dodgers. I think he's retiring in 2022. And I liked what he had to say about Fernando. He said that Fernando's very unique in baseball history and that he's maybe brought in more fans into baseball than anybody who's ever played the game. And that would include even Sandy Koufax and Joe DiMaggio and Babe Ruth. He turned so many fans from Mexico, Central America, and South America into baseball fans. And he created interest in baseball among those who likely didn't care about baseball, especially in those communities. So I just love having this card. There's so many things that I can do with this card in my collection that I'm going to show. He's certainly one of these iconic pitchers of the time, but there's some other displays I'm going to do with this card. And it's just a beautiful example of an 81 Topps. And not a cheap card, considering that he's not a Hall of Famer, but it's one that I'm just thrilled to add to my collection, of course, just like we all are when we add cards, and just one that I like having. So everybody have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.